Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you that are calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. We like to move quickly through these calls, bottom line the information for you. We know you're busy folks and you have other things to do. We have a standard format here. We spend a few minutes talking about the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar, which we still continue to believe is the base currency for the potential revaluation of some of these other currencies. A few minutes talking about the program we've put in place to assist you, then go to a brief Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about the situation as it exists in Iraq. But before I do that, and by way of disclaimer, I need to let you know that Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the purchase or the sale of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you the information that we think is relevant. And of course, the most relevant piece of information would be the potential window for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. For over 6 months now, we've been talking about January of 2020 as being the most plausible date for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. And we are still cautiously optimistic that January of 2020 is the time frame for the reinstitution of the dinar. And that leaves individuals precious little time to get their affairs in order prior to this event. So again, let's talk a little bit about Iraq. The number one issue in Iraq, if we step back and look at the big picture, is their international declaration of sovereignty. And that is going to be accomplished first and foremost by ending the interference of the Iranians into the Iraqi affairs. What's happened since our last call? The Mahdi government is resigning. The President of the Republic, Barham Salih, pursuant to Article 81 of the Iraqi Constitution, is the interim head of the government. Now, Salih is merely a caretaker, and pursuant to Article 76 of the Iraqi Constitution, will appoint an interim prime minister or remain as the caretaker until the election. The individual that will probably be selected will most likely be someone that's approved by the Sadr's coalition, which is by far the largest coalition in parliament and which has supported the demands of the protesters. Now, the United States is pushing for the quick new elections in Iraq. To that end, Vice President Pence recently visited Iraq. He had extensive meetings with the delegation from Baghdad and with the Kurdistan regional government. The parliament has reaffirmed the legitimate presence of the U.S. troops in Iraq, and this is putting the Iranians on notice that their interference is once and for all coming to an end. The parliament has scheduled a second reading of the new election law for early next week, so they can move rather quickly through this process if they want to. Now, the Iraqi protesters have formally established something they refer to as the sovereignty of the Iraq movement. And the sovereignty of Iraq movement has made some very specific demands. They want the indictment of corrupt officials pursuant to the accountability and justice law, whether these officials are guilty of graft and greed and or are merely proxies for the Iranians. They also demand the deportation of all Iranians who are shown to be part of the Iranian Quds forces. And incidentally, it is the belief that the Iranian Quds forces were behind the violence against the protesters, deadly violence, in order to keep Iraq under their thumb. In addition, they want a permanent halt to all currency auctions. And again, by doing so, they will be denying the Iranians their source of hard currency, which they acquire through these auctions in order to circumvent the U.S. sanctions. And lastly, they want the official opening of the government of Iraq's anti-corruption files. In other words, they want not only these individuals indicted, but they want these individuals made known to the general public. Now, while all this is going on, the CBI is involved in a number of actions pointing toward, again, the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar, which we hope will be in January. Now, again, remember, the UN, the IMF, the United States, all gave Iraq basically a 45-day glide path in the middle of November to get these things done. And, of course, the end of the 45 days takes us where? January 1st. So the CBI has, for the time being, halted all loans and financial transactions effective December 1st. They want basically to put everything on hold while they proceed with the deletion of the zeros and then instruct the 8 regional banks that they can release the lower dinars to the general public. They also want the release of the oil revenue proceeds to the citizens pursuant to the hydrocarbon law. In other words, they want that law finally implemented. Now, this is important because the massive release of oil revenues to the general public has got to be done at the reinstitution rate, a rate which we've discussed on numerous occasions would probably be something like 10 to 15% premium over the U.S. dollar. So all of this is on track. There are only 2 caveats that could affect the reinstitution of the dinar in January as we see it. The first is that the UN has made threats to place Iraq back in Chapter 7. And the second caveat is that the Iranian provocations could actually escalate. Now, in both cases, I do not believe that that will happen. In both cases, I think that the Iranians will, in terms of Chapter 7, make sure that, the Iraqis will do everything necessary to make sure that they don't slip back into Chapter 7. And the Iranian provocations will be met with U.S. forces at this point in time because the parliament has basically put the Iranians on notice that they will do whatever necessary to ensure that the Quds forces and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard will no longer be able to foment all kinds of violence, discord, and chaos as they move forward with their final declaration of complete and total sovereignty, not just for the world, but to announce their formal separation from the interference of the Iranians. Now, this is good news. Now, with regard to the caveats, the absolute worst-case scenario, I do not think this will occur. But if Iraq should fall back into Chapter 7, or if the Iranians should really step up their violence within the border of Iraq, theoretically that could push the reinstitution of their currency all the way to January of 2021. I do not believe that that could happen. It is, of course, a possibility. I must acknowledge that. But I think it's extremely unlikely. There's simply too much going on in country to suggest that the Iranians have really decided they're going to put the pedal to the metal and get this done. Now, that being the case, you have precious little time to get your affairs in order. Because most dinarians are not wealthy individuals, they've not dealt with the management of substantial amounts of money, particularly receiving it literally overnight. So to that end, Trusts Unlimited has put a turnkey program in place to assist you. It's a 2-phase program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a pre-RV package of asset protection trusts with the assignment of your dinar and these other currencies on paper to that trust package. Phase 2 is post-RV. Involves all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. So let's start with Phase 1. which is the establishment, again, of your pre-RV package of asset protection trusts. Now, there are a number of entities one can establish to provide some level of asset protection. For example, individuals can and have established LLCs and sub-S corporations. Now, these are business entities, and they do provide some level of asset protection, primarily separating business assets from personal assets. The problem with using the LLC and the sub-S corporation is that the currencies are a personal asset. They're not a business asset per se. In addition, courts have ruled that if an LLC or sub-S corporation is owned in the majority by one person or a closely held group, that LLC or sub-S corporation can be pierced for civil litigation. So that makes those entities inappropriate for our needs. Some individuals have established something called a revocable or a living trust. Now, such a trust will exempt your estate from probate and can, in some cases, substantially reduce your exposure to the federal estate tax, but revocable or living trusts can provide no privacy or asset protection, so they're inappropriate for your needs. Lastly, individuals have established single irrevocable trusts, and they do provide some privacy and asset protection. But here's the inherent flaw in a single trust. All of your assets are owned by that one trust or that one legal entity. So if any asset within that trust is dragged into civil litigation, that would necessarily drag the rest of the assets in your net worth into litigation as well, because they're all owned by the same entity. The only bulletproof asset protection that one can establish to protect you both pre and post RV is to create a package of irrevocable trusts, and that package must be established prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies for the following reasons. First, our asset protection trust package will preserve your privacy and your anonymity. Why? Because the assets within our trust package are sealed, meaning that the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Second, by establishing this trust package, you will be able to avoid personal IRS scrutiny. If you are holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, the IRS computers will most likely spit out an audit. And with the potential magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. Such an audit would be time-consuming. It would certainly be frustrating because it would come along at the precise time that the currencies have revalued, and you're going to want to be busy doing a lot of other things. And third, the cost of a 6-year IRS audit would probably be substantially more than the cost of our asset protection trust package. On the other hand, if your pre-RV asset protection trust package is in force and your currencies have been assigned on paper to that trust package, you will have successfully transferred the taxable event of this revaluation from yourself personally to the trust. Now, this is important for two reasons. First, there's only a 10% chance of an audit if this revaluation were to occur within the trust. But second, and most importantly, even if the IRS determines to audit your trust, they can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because included within the package is our specially designed gift subtrust. Now, philanthropic and charitable giving can be done on a tax-preferred basis either pre- or post-RV. But in order to avoid a substantial 40% federal gift tax, you're going to need to give currencies to family and friends prior to the revaluation. Now, if you're gifting to individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves, or giving them the USD lump sum after you have conducted the exchange, that can be accomplished outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to give these individuals the post-RV lump sum, then you can gift to them through this special gift subtrust. Because you're gifting through our trust package, their U.S. dollars will be protected along with yours. The language of this subtrust allows you to gift up to a certain amount of a currency or currencies, meaning you can gift these individuals the exact U.S. dollar amount that you had in mind, irrespective of the exchange rate. But because you're gifting through this gift subtrust, you will be able to manage, control, invest, and distribute the proceeds to these individuals as you deem appropriate. There is no other way you could have that kind of control without this gift subtrust. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'll give you two quick scenarios. Scenario number one, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. Now that estate must go through probate, a process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with a probate court. And that could tie the estate up for years, and in some cases even decades. And your heirs will have either very limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax. This is the tax that the federal government would assess in order for that estate to be transferred to heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate would bypass any federal estate tax, but the balance could be taxed as much as 55%. Now, this scenario is not only unacceptable, it's completely and totally avoidable. Scenario number two, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to our asset protection trust package. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. And the day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs that same $25 million estate, but this time protected in our asset protection trust package. As a result, there will be no probate, there will be no public disclosure of your estate, your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be zero, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. That is reason enough to establish this trust prior to the revaluation of these currencies. Now, the last and most important reason for establishing this trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits, which can only be accomplished with a package of trusts. One asset benefit is pre-RV, and the other asset protection benefit is post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. Now, what does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's take the previous example from above. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. You transfer the currencies to the trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. As the beneficiary of the trust, you begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth, and a couple of years down the road, someone sees that you're living rather comfortably and decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Well, this prospective plaintiff has a couple of problems. First, he or she better have a very strong case and very deep pockets, because this trust is structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. But second, and most importantly, once any prospective plaintiff learns that pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, the only thing they could win by way of a civil award would be $5,000. The value of the currencies at the time you transferred them out of title to the trust, and none of the post-RV value of $25 million, there will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop-loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets, and this is how it would work. Again, we'll use the same example. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, assign the currencies to the trust, they subsequently revalue for $25 million. Now that you have $25 million in trust, you decide to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary residence, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate subtrust to be managed by the master trust. This is what we mean when we say a package of trusts. Now, why is this critical from an asset protection standpoint? Well, let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your subtrusts, of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that subtrust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will mercifully not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will then repair or replace your car, making you whole. And this is important. All of your other assets are safely protected in the other subtrusts. Why? Because under the law, those separate subtrusts are separate legal entities or persons, and the plaintiffs would have no standing to pursue a separate legal entity or person in this civil litigation. So your package of trusts work very much the way a barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your package of trusts prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. Now, there is one other benefit, and it's this. If you are, in fact, the holder of one of our pre-RV asset protection trust packages, then you will be eligible to participate in Phase 2, all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar. And at that point in time, you are really going to need the advice of seasoned professionals. Now, I'll just give you one example of one of the benefits that you will receive as part of our Phase 2. Trusts Unlimited will be sponsoring a post-RV seminar to be held in Disney World, Florida, approximately 30 days after the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. Present at that seminar will, of course, be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to assist you with the management and funding of your trust packages post-RV. Many of our clients have expressed desires to establish scholarship funds, foundational trusts, special needs trusts, charitable remainder trusts, and even the more complicated 501c3 nonprofit and offshore trusts. And the proper way to fund those entities is with a direct transfer of funds from your asset protection trust to those newly formed entities. Our tax specialists will be there to help you with some very specialized assistance with some of the tax issues you're going to need to deal with. Our offshore specialists will show you that by establishing offshore title of certain assets, you can substantially reduce and in some cases eliminate future taxes on the reinvestment from the net proceeds of the revaluation itself. We will also have our independent fee-based wealth managers there as well. You're going to want to reposition assets and properly manage this newfound wealth as soon as possible for a number of reasons. First, we know statistically that 95% of all windfalls, however large and from whatever source, are lost within 3 to 5 years due to inexperience, mismanagement, and fraud. We also know that under the new G20 bank bail-in provisions, the failure of banks in the future will no longer be made whole through the general taxing authority of the respective governments, but first and foremost by the confiscation of funds at the accounts at those banks. So you're going to want to get money out of the banks and it work in different markets. And lastly, the general global shift from fiat-based to Basel III compliant commodity-backed currencies in and of itself is going to create extremely volatile financial markets, and you're going to want a substantial amount of your net worth in tangible assets. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV, and then financial accounts like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV. Your master trust also has the ability to manage all of the sub-trusts. One optional gift sub-trust if you plan on gifting currencies to family and friends, which sub-trust can at any time be utilized as a standard sub-trust, and then 8 additional sub-trusts to hold financial assets, physical assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past from our more affluent clients that already had a substantial net worth. But when we decided to work with Dinarians nearly 8 years ago, we knew that the cost of $6,000 to $10,000 for that trust package was just going to be unaffordable for many. So by simplifying and restructuring that package, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. Now, there are several ways you can pay for that. The best way, of course, is to pay us up front, in which case you will get an additional $500 discount, reducing the cost of this trust from anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 all the way down to $2,500. If that's not possible, we do have a deferred payment arrangement. You would make an initial payment of $525, which basically offsets our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar occurs, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. Now, with this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for establishing their trust package pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. If you pay us up front with a credit card, not only will you get the $500 discount, reducing the price of the trust from $3,000 to $2,500, but the minimum payment on your card would be substantially less than the $100 a month you would pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. One other point, the only additional cost of this trust package lifetime would be the rather nominal paralegal fees involved in you making changes to the trust or funding the sub-trusts. I'll give you one example. Let's say after the revaluation, you purchase a beach house. And so you come to us and say, we are going to be closing on a beach house at a price of $1 million, and we need to protect that beach house in a subtrust. The paralegal fee to establish a subtrust to protect that $1 million beach house would be somewhere between $100 and $150. Again, a very nominal fee, only necessary in order to pay the paralegals. Now, I hope this information has been helpful. I hope those of you that have called in for the first time will contact us and get our initial package with all of the information. I will be providing you that information in a moment before we go to the Q&A. But before we go to that Q&A, I want to tell you just a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you may want to seriously consider allowing us to assist you, or again, at the very least, getting our initial no-obligation package. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for over 38 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Iraq Dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have over 78 years' experience working precisely in this area, and I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, Bob and I have been working together for a decade in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. And frankly, it has been disheartening from time to time to see people walk away from sound estate planning and trust creation because of the mistaken belief that by doing so they have somehow lost control of their assets and their affairs. Under our system of civil procedure, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them. And invariably, it's at precisely those times in life that you need and want control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced directly in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, under our system of civil litigation, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives, both pre- and post-RV, as we understand them. Again, I'd like to thank you for listening to the call. I'm going to go to the Q&A in just a moment. When I do, I suggest you have a pen and paper ready so that I can give you our contact information in the event that you'd like to get one of our initial packages. Again, you're under absolutely no obligation whatsoever by getting this package, even though it does include everything you need should you decide to proceed with the establishment of your pre-RV package of asset protection trusts. But it has a lot of information about us, about the currencies, about the revaluation, and you can review the package. Contact us by phone or email if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you, and there will be no consultation fee. So I'm going to go ahead and open the Q&A here. When I do, 2 quick rules on the Q&A. We take no service calls on the Q&A. Our clients can contact us by phone or email if they have service questions. And obviously, in order to participate in the Q&A, your name and number must be on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and open now. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, I'd like to give you our contact information. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. If you'd like to listen to a recent conference call playback, or if you'd be kind enough to refer us to someone that might be interested in our services, you can either go to YouTube and then go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can go to IQD calls and then go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can simply dial the same number that you dialed for this live call this afternoon, with the exception of the last digit. Rather than dialing 4, you'll dial a 3, and then you'll use the same access code, which is 739-394#. If you'd like to be included on our email list, you can go to our website, go to the bottom, enter your name and email address where indicated. You should be on our email list within 24 hours. Bear in mind that we only send emails out periodically, pre-RV, but after the reinstitution of the Iraqi Dinar, emails may go out as often as weekly. So let's go to the Q&A. Our first caller is area code 347. That's 347. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Praveen from New York. I have a question now. Can the RV occur before the new election?
I believe that whether the election happens today or whether the election happens sometime next year, the interim government should be in place, and we still believe that even without the election, they can proceed with the reinstitution of the dinar.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. That is a good question, but the purpose of Sections 81 and Sections 76 of the Iraqi Constitution, even though it would seem unlikely that this would occur, does in fact provide for the caretaker government and interim officials prior to a new election, and that should be sufficient for the reinstitution of the dinar because, again, January is a critical date. It's the issuance of their new budget for 2020, and as long as they have a functioning government in place, they should proceed, in our opinion, with the reinstitution. Okay, our next caller is area code 323. That's 323. Go ahead.
Yes, I have a question. This is a complex trust, I understand, and is it non-statutory?
Okay, there are statutory trusts and there are common law trusts. To put it simply, this is a common law trust good in all 50 states.
Oh, so it's not a complex trust. It's non.
Now you're confusing. A complex trust is a trust where the beneficiary can utilize the dividends and interest generated, utilize the assets in the trust, or remove principal and assets. This is a complex trust, and it's a common law trust.
I see. And it is non-statutory?
That's correct. It is not a statutory trust.
Okay, thank you.
An example of a statutory trust would be a revocable trust. A revocable trust is designed to exempt one's estate from probate and to reduce the federal estate tax. Probate is regulated statutorily, state by state. This trust is good in all 50 states, making it a common law trust, and is in addition to that a complex trust, meaning you can remove assets from the trust. Okay?
Yes.
All right. Our next caller is area code 312. That's 312. It's got to be Les.
Yes, indeed. Les in Chicago. Good morning.
Yes, sir.
So, just to touch off on that last answer you gave, you can remove assets from the trust by way of a trustee. Is that correct?
Yes. remember, this trust is designed, and one of the reasons we utilize the Wyoming statutes is because the trustee will sign a document naming you as their advisor, meaning that you can request anything you want. For example, you can request to purchase an item and have it placed in the trust. You can request to remove an item from the trust. It's entirely your right to do that. Now, assuming and I don't know why you would, if you had a trustee that for some reason did not want to honor your request, you simply replace the trustee. That's not an issue at all. But as a complex trust, you can place assets in the trust and you can remove assets from the trust at your sole discretion.
Okay. I wanted you to expound on that because some people that listen to the call live, they don't ask questions because they feel sometimes their questions are too simple or that they should know.
No, that's why I'm here. I mean, you can't know all of these things. Believe me, when something goes wrong with my car, to be honest with you, my wife knows more about it than I do. So, we all have our expertise. We live in an age of specialization. As an example, 9 out of 10 estate attorneys that do trust work for estates have no understanding of this trust package because it's been designed specifically for individuals that have an asset they anticipate a substantial increase in value. So it's designed to help them circumvent litigation. And estate planning attorneys don't have necessarily expertise in litigation. So again, we're in an age of specialization, and there aren't any dumb questions.
All right. I'm glad you said that. Maybe they'll lighten up, and feel free to press *6.
Yeah, I mean, you listen to my calls. I don't bite anyone's head off. I'm happy to help people. I know. Now, on occasion, we'll get a smarty pants on here, and then I got to reduce them to a fine powder. But beyond that, everything's cool.
That's why I stay in my place, even though I'm getting a certificate from this class when we're done.
Yeah. Okay.
So, lastly, the issues in Iraq and the government officials that have been taken, kidnapped, because they have they have turned up the protest, the heat on the protest, and it was said they gave the government 1 week because the government was crying 30 days or something like that, and they said, no, 1 week. So in them giving the government 1 week to produce, that 1 week ends this week because that was last week when they did it.
But what the week's over, as long as they know the government's moving forward, they're not going to pull the trigger on it. It's just standard operating procedure in the East. Threats, deadlines, and then you renegotiate. It's just the way it is. The issue for Iraq is they were put on a 45-day glide path by the United Nations, by the IMF, and by the U.S. Treasury Department. And now the protesters have really put the heat on them. So, unfortunately, the individuals involved, it's the same thing happening in this country. We elect a president that is an iconoclast. He's breaking down the status quo. Anytime you threaten the status quo, the people that have benefited from the status quo are trying to stop you. That's what's happening in Iraq. And what they've been told is, if necessary, brute naked force is what will be used. So, that's why we still continue to believe, we're cautiously optimistic that January of 2020 is when we will see the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar, because people are going to have the cuffs slapped on them between now and then.
All righty. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for taking my call. Say hi to the professor. Have a great day, man.
You too. Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Well, Les is our last caller for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. If the things we've discussed here are of interest to you, if we've at the very least treat your curiosity, I strongly suggest you contact us and get our initial package. Again, you're under absolutely no obligation by doing so, even though you will receive everything you need should you wish to proceed. You can review the package, contact us if you have any questions. There will be no consultation fee. We're trying to help you make an informed decision for all of the reasons I've stated here on this call. Our next call is scheduled, of course, next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. Failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks again for listening, and have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.